This grandfather from Florida crashed the US economy just to drive down the price of Russian oil. And no one even said thank you to him.
And don't listen to what some politicians are babbling, because these countries are already calling and flattering as best they can. They're willing to do anything to get to you. Please, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do everything. And then a rebellious Republican pops up. The type who loves self-promotion and declares, I believe Congress should take negotiations into its own hands. Listen, you don't know how to negotiate like I do.
Hello, my name is Kateryna Soliar and there will be no usual countdown of time. But here we'll be counting not how many countries are kissing Donald Trump below the belt, but how much the United States has already lost. The country is rich, they can afford it. Just like they can afford to wage a trade war. And again, someone might think this is chaos, but no. Donald Trump announced a budget cut of $1 trillion. Hold on to those cuts. Musk lost $300 billion, and Trump lost $500 billion. Also, the wealth of other rich people has steadily declined since April 2nd. And now, minus $1 trillion. Don't thank.
Today, I had a very good meeting with the Speaker of the House and some of our more conservative members. They're all great people. I let them know that I'm for serious spending cuts. We're going to make cuts that I hope will exceed $1 trillion and go into one big, beautiful piece of legislation. Together with the members of the House and senators, I will firmly advocate for these substantial cuts. But we need to get the bill approved now. Let's make America great again.
Everything is quite logical. At least, in Donald Trump's mind. But for some reason, it's not logical in expectations. No, not even from the Democrats, because they've long stopped expecting anything from him, but from the Republicans. At least 10 Republicans are planning to sign a bill blocking the possibility of the White House imposing unilateral tariffs. If successful, this could cancel Trump's tariffs in 40 days. Some symbolic date. Just to add, when rumors started circulating that we, led by Trump, might suspend tariffs for 90 days, stock market indices immediately began to rise. But when it became clear this was nothing more than a rumor, they crashed back into that same abyss. Although, Trump claims that the tariffs supposedly bring the US $2 billion every day. It's something out of the Ukraine owes us $350 billion, 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers are surrounded in Kursk, and Europe must compensate us for solving the problem with the Houthis category. Because, why? Right. Trump decided not to stop at his war with the world and announced tariffs on pharmaceutical imports. And as a result, the price of oil immediately plummeted to a new historic low, reaching just $59.80. This marks the historic global low recorded on February 8, 2021. At this rate, we'll soon be down to $1 at 8, and you say, yeah, things won't be the same as before. Meanwhile, while Trump waits for the pharmaceutical business from all over the world to move its production to the US businesses are thinking whether to close today or wait until tomorrow. Recently introduced tariffs on imports, especially from China, and I remind you, that's 104% now, have significantly impacted the American retail business, clothing and accessory merchants. Many of these companies are now being forced to postpone orders and put a hold on hiring new staff. Small businesses, which don't have global supply chains and the financial reserves of big brands, are especially vulnerable. Some companies are already warning about possible closures within the next 30 days unless there's a significant reduction in tariffs. Large American banks are also facing significant challenges as they prepare for financial results that are expected to reflect growing concerns about the possibility of an impending recession. Analysts anticipate that banks will raise their reserves in order to safeguard against potential loan losses as economic risks continue to grow, largely due to the new tariffs being implemented. Experts are warning that the combination of rising interest rates and other challenging economic factors could potentially lead to a significant increase in bankruptcies across various sectors of the U.S. economy. In particular, companies with high debt levels and limited financial reserves will face particular difficulties. And I'll remind you, just 80 days ago, there were discussions about additional jobs for Americans, and now we're talking about business bankruptcies. That's how the world changes. The Chinese, they say, will wait. Just to remind you, this is exactly the Chinese wisdom: sit by the river and wait until the corpse of your enemy floats by. So, in Beijing, officials are indicating that they might wait for the US to struggle and ultimately fail in addressing inflation, growing American dissatisfaction, rising prices, and increasing unemployment, all of which are largely a result of Trump's tariffs. According to Beijing, this is the simplest way to get Trump to the negotiating table. But for now, there aren't many Americans on the streets, well, unless you count the protests on the weekends, which Donald Trump obviously doesn't, while at Apple stores, on the contrary. Americans are storming electronics stores to buy iPhones before the tariffs hit. Shoppers fear that after the implementation of these Trump tariffs, phone prices will skyrocket. One employee mentioned that just last weekend, the stores were literally overwhelmed with customers frantically purchasing gadgets in a state of panic. The iPhone is not only Apple's best-selling product but also its most important one, with the majority of these phones being manufactured in China, where they have recently been subjected to tariffs as high as 104%. Right. And while Trump was saying they'd come to negotiate with him, the Chinese people, Vance called the Chinese peasants.
We're borrowing money from Chinese peasants to buy things those same Chinese peasants produce.
Let me skip this. Remarks such as those made by Vice President Vance are not only undiplomatic but also potentially damaging to international relations. Using derogatory language to describe the citizens of another country goes against established diplomatic etiquette and can significantly escalate tensions between nations, leading to further complications in diplomatic efforts. Such comments also undermine efforts to build constructive dialogue and mutual understanding between countries, and all that. I'll just say that these are the same people who accused President Zelensky of undiplomatic behavior during his conversation in the Oval Office. What's interesting is that Vance made this comment last Thursday, but it only started being widely discussed now because a clip of his interview made its way into Chinese internet circles, sparking a rather strong negative reaction. If you take a moment to read the comments, you'll undoubtedly notice that this so-called peasant from rural America appears to be severely lacking in perspective, writes Hu Sijin, the former editor-in-chief of the state-run tabloid Global Times, in a post on the popular Weibo microblogging platform. Many people are calling for him to come and see China with his own eyes. But what for? He watches stories. And the hashtag from Vance's remark became the most popular topic on Weibo by Monday night. By Tuesday, it had accumulated 140 million views. And there are comments like, "This is their true face, arrogant and rude, as they have always been," a statement that quickly gained 2,900 likes. Others highlighted the irony of Vance's remarks, considering his own working-class background, which he extensively described in his 2016 memoir Hillbilly Elegy, where he recounts his personal experiences growing up in a poor, working-class family. In the book, Vance talks about his childhood spent in poverty, his mother's drug addiction, and the harsh treatment he faced, partly in the Appalachian region of the US, which he believed was forgotten by the wealthy elite. Vance's book Venture Capitalist caused a huge sensation following Trump's first election victory, with many readers interpreting it as an explanation of how the billionaire's immense wealth was, in part, rooted in the working-class background and experiences that shaped his rise to prominence. The Guardian noted that such remarks could complicate trade relations between the US and China, especially in light of the growing tension over the new tariffs. Although, is Vance the only one making such remarks? Donald Trump himself has also made pretty ambiguous statements that increasingly resemble the rhetoric of Lavrov, Putin, and Peskov. It's bad that these things are being discussed more and more on air, worse that we're talking about it not only among ourselves, and the worst part is that the world is noticing it. And while I understand we're still a long way from it, in the US, betting on Trump's impeachment has already begun. Some bookmakers are now offering bets on the likelihood of impeachment taking place before 2028, with odds set at plus 200, which translates to roughly a 33% chance of this occurring within that time frame. However, these bets only reflect the opinion of the players. I will clarify again, they are not official predictions. Still, I couldn't ignore them. And once this show started with the words 24 hours left before peace, a peace that's being talked about less and less. But certainly not by me. So see you.